FM.
Good morning, young man. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I like your dress.
It was made by Click and Dimples, a Ghanaian entrepreneur. Thank you very much. Maybe I'll link you to him.
I'll be most grateful.
Brilliant stuff. I recall 2004 when we started this station, you were the first minister properly to come for an interview. I think at the time Paul Adomotri was the host, and you gave us an interview about the economy. That interview, it was getting to election, and people were worried that we were going to run a deficit. So this was around November. And I think you promised that you were not going to allow us to get into that cyclical political deficit. And looking at the records, you succeeded. I don't know what you recall of 2004. My question is, how far have we come since that time? You being finance minister, first term of Kufuor about to end. Now it's 2019, 15 years later. How far have we come as a country?
As a country, we have come very, very far. Don't forget, 2004, we are at the tail end of HIPIC. And therefore, Ghana was such a heavily indebted country that we have sought refuge from the fund to declare ourselves bankrupt. HIPIC is heavily indebted, poor country. That is HIPIC. And you have to declare it yourself in order to benefit from certain benefits, in order to benefit fundamentally from the write-offs of all your debts. And we did. So, taking it from there, 2004, and as you rightly pointed out, it is the only election year that Ghana did not overspend. 2000 we overspent, 2008 we overspent, 2012 we overspent, 2016 we overspent, meaning that our target deficit was exceeded by far. But 2004, we in fact did not even reach our target deficit. And this made me very unpopular among my colleagues.
Even in government?
Even in government. In fact, you being outside, you didn't note this. But this was my Achilles heel. Because I insisted that we have all approved an appropriation act for ourselves. We have approved a budget, and I would limit ministers to spend in accordance with the approved budget. And I had the support of the president. So no minister could use the president to bully me to spend outside the budget.
What kind of pressure gets imposed on finance ministers in election years?
Because you've done only one term, for instance, in our case. You want a second term. And most MPs will need additional resources in terms of projects, unplanned projects, unbudgeted projects. He suddenly finds out that if he did not do a primary school in a particular town, he will not win the elections in that town. So there's pressure coming from all angles. And your colleagues are going to tell you, do you want me to lose this election? And I was myself an MP. So with that kind of thing, you've got to say, but this was not budgeted for. And I think it's a discipline that we should try to do, and countries which have made it have also tried to put that discipline on themselves. It is very important. Because just yesterday, we read the budget. By end of December, we would have passed an appropriation act. It means that Parliament, the authority that passes law in this country, would have allocated a certain amount of money to each ministry to spend for the 2020 year. Why would you allow everybody to overspend? It's illegal, fundamentally.
So if you can't raise enough revenue, you cut your expenditure to not be too much higher than the revenue you raise. So you keep that gap in a certain margin. That's the deficit, right?
I established an office which was on daily basis matching expenditure with revenue, so that I'm not taken by surprise, because the revenue is coming from various angles through various accounts, and the Minister of Finance, I must follow it. Expenditure is also coming from various ministries and various institutions. I must follow it. I want to match the two. So if the revenue is not coming, I'll cut down the expenditure so that there would always be.
But does it not depend on the type of expenditure? So let's assume revenue is not coming, but you spend the money on investment type things like tollable roads or building projects that can pay for themselves. Is that not better? So should we not look at what the money is spent on as against simply saying you are overspending?
No. If, for instance, Company A is coming out to do a toll road, it has nothing to do with my budget. It's a private sector investment. So you can encourage that kind of investment. It becomes your budget if the expenditure is coming from the government coffers. So you can encourage expenditure that is not on the government and is self-financing.
Now, I'm asking this because when you look at the Kenofriata's budget, when he realized in 2019 that his revenue wasn't going high, he cut his expenditure and cut capital expenditure. Yes. So his capital expenditure was about 44% of target. He cut it. And some people feel that if you don't spend on capital expenditure, because that's what has the potential to multiply. If you cut that, you are killing yourself. You can reduce consumption expenditure. But if you cut capex, you are restricting the economy's ability to expand in the future.
But what can you cut? You cannot cut what you are describing as expenditure because it's really the salaries and wages. And that is a constant you cannot touch. Can you have a situation where you do not pay public servants at the end of the month on the grounds that you are trying to cut expenditure? You can't. So always that...
So inevitably you will cut the capital expenditure.
That's how it comes, inevitably.
15 years since you were finance minister, has the economic structure changed? Some people will say it has not. We still largely depend on raw materials. The only thing is that before, when you were minister, we didn't have oil. It was cocoa, gold, timber. Now it's cocoa, gold, timber, oil. Structure is not changed. We export largely over 80% of them raw. Why is that?
Well, if you ask your first question, has the structure of the economy changed? The answer is slightly. It's slightly because if economy is running and running right, if economy is developing and is developing right, it goes through these cycles. One, it will first depend on agriculture because that is your gift and your natural resources. Ghana abounds in good land. Ghana abounds in bauxite, in gold. So you are likely to earn your resources through your natural resources. And one of such resources is agriculture. Your people naturally are farmers or fisher folks, etc., etc. But as you develop, you must be processing the raw materials from your agriculture. So you begin to see an increase in the industrial sector growth. And that should come automatically if you are developing right. Now, in the case of Ghana, yes, the industrial growth has come up, but not at the speed it should. And you would have realized that in the immediate past, under the NDC, industrial growth was negative. That is serious, meaning that your agriculture will be forced to expand to make up if you are going to keep your labor, and you are not catching up your total development. So you are not industrializing. So we realize that in our manifesto, we talked about industrial transformation because we saw all the data and we taught ourselves that, look, we must industrialize. And now Akufo-Addo was very passionate about this. We have to transform agriculture itself by going modern, using better seeds, using mechanized systems, using less land for more production. But we must industrialize. We must process the raw materials so that we go to that level. Now, behind agriculture and industry are the service industry. The service industry should automatically also expand in tandem with the industrial, because your people are developing into the middle class and they begin to enjoy all kinds of services. So the service industry begins to grow. So you grow your agriculture, convert agriculture growth into industrial growth, and industrial growth, agric modernized growth, will give rise to service industry. And then the economy is in the right direction. And I think at the moment, we are going
But
quite.
if you look at the share of our growth, two things. Agric is still the primary driver.
Yes.
And then when it comes to industrial growth, a lot of the industrial growth is not from manufacturing, which is what you are hoping. It is coming from...
What we should not only hoping, but we should drive at.
Yes, but it is coming from the increase in oil and gas production.
Yes.
So that's not actually what the transformation we want. The transformation we want is for manufacturing.
Yes.
But that has not happened yet.
It is happening, but it has been overridden by oil and gas. Oil and gas came in 2011, okay? And naturally, it overtook all the others because of the volumes of quantities of monies involved. So it has gone up. But that's good. But we should now begin to take manufacturing in a targeted manner. And that is why Akufo-Addo's dream of one district, one factory becomes relevant. Because now, if manufacturing is not going the rate you want, you must induce it. There should be a policy that drives industry. And when you talk about one district, one factory, young man, invariably, most of these district factories we're talking about would depend on agriculture raw materials. Most of them. So you are now inducing the conversion of agriculture into industry, which is important. And therefore, now we are doing that. And within the one district, one factory, we have about 180, roughly, one district, one factory under construction or completion, a few completed but under construction. And I can assure you that within the end of the first term, 1D, 1F will change the structure of the industrial growth.
The import of things that we can produce here has not gone down. Indeed, recently you are quoted to have expressed worry about the high levels of importation of rice into Ghana. You even went as far as to say that we even import flowers into Ghana. We look at the amount we spend on importing things like rice. The figure is actually going up. Frozen chicken.
I feel
sugar. So my question is, if we are trying to do agric, planting for food and jobs, and then 1D, 1F, processing what we produce, how come we are not seeing the response in the import? Because the import figures are still going up. What's wrong?
What is wrong is policy to back your industrialization. When I was the Minister of Finance, my colleague in Nigeria told me at the ECOWAS Finance Ministers meeting that next 2 years, we shall ban the importation of rice. And I was chilled. I said, what? Ban importation of rice? He said, yes, Oga will do it. So they gave notice to the whole country that within the next 3 years, we are going to expand, which means that the government has a policy that is going to promote production and has imposed on itself a time limit. So that in the 3 years came, Nigeria banned the importation of rice. So you just don't talk about it. The late Major Courage Kashiga, when he was Minister for Agri, we were importing $300 million of rice. And he promised that he will bring it down to 100 by the third year. On the contrary, it went to about 500 million in the third year. And as I lamented the other time, I think last 2 years, total rice import was about $1.35 billion US. We cannot continue that way. So it means that we should not just be talking about these things. We should take certain.
So what have you done? What have you put in place, Senior Minister? Because
I think the Minister of Agric is working very hard. The agric policy of
planting for food and
jobs and rearing for food and export, etc., are now targeted at what is really the main problem of, let's say, rice in production in Ghana. The main problem is the processing of the rice. People want to eat rice without stones in it. So if you have a situation where your processing is not of high quality, then you are likely to have. And the minister has put in place a system of bringing in facilities for processing that will lift up our processing qualitatively to a level that
But
will enable
people
him.
say there are simpler things we can do. For example, we
Fine.
are doing a school feeding program. We have hundreds of thousands of secondary schools students. If we are to insist that
You have literally answered the question.
no, but have we done it?
They are all policies that should, and I think the Minister of Agric, together the buffer stock and all the other agencies involved are working in this direction. You have the army to feed. You have the police to feed. You have the school children to feed. You have a captive market. The government has a captive market. And therefore, the government should have a policy that insists on the supply.
Do you?
Oh, yes. The minister has met all rice importers and exporters, no exporters, importers, and they've had meetings and is encouraging them to turn their attention on distributing the meat in Ghana rice. They've had series of meetings.
But honestly,
it's a mentality.
This can be direct. This can be a directive because it's a government program.
But
so you don't need to have it.
But if you don't have production, you can't direct. You want to feed your school children with locally produced rice.
No.
The locally produced rice is not available.
No, but it is.
So,
If we look at the numbers the Agric Ministry is saying,
and what we are doing now,
the Agric Ministry.
so you must start with production, which the Agric Minister has done and done very well. So I'm sure the Agric Minister is now in a position to move us in the direction of forcing the use of locally produced, say, rice
There's a view
onto
that
a government budget.
there's a view that the import lobby is very strong, and that's why the government is unable
it's
to.
strong everywhere.
It's
And
unable to decisively.
We should overcome it.
But they say they are powerful. They fund politics. Some of them are very influential in both NDC and MPP. So it's very difficult to implement policies that go against rice importers, chicken importers in particular.
I don't think it will work with the MPP this time around. I've talked to the Minister for Agric. He is also doing it in a very private sector-led motivation. He's talking to these importers and is encouraging them to change their own mindset in terms of rice distributing locally produced rice. And I think if we succeed in the processing, it should work.
Last week, the president was in the Volta region. A company is producing hundreds of thousands of bags of rice per week, locally made rice. They are milling the rice. They are ready to distribute. The Volta region is producing so much rice, I'm told that very soon they can feed the whole Ghana rice. So the production issue is being addressed, as you said. Let me read a quick story for you. Local poultry farmers demand government action on high poultry imports. This is November 12th, 3 days ago. And the story is by Anita Kisimiriku, 2 lines. Local players in Ghana's poultry industry have reiterated calls on government to consider placing a cap on the volumes of imported poultry products into the country. According to the association, they will be able to increase production with the requisite support from government to meet the shortfall that would be created by a deliberate reduction in imports. What's your comment on this?
I support it 100%. The government should try to confirm the production data, because we don't also want a situation where the local producers say we are producing X when indeed it is 0.5X. So when we are supporting the production data and the production data is right, I think this is the way to go, because this will really assist both the farmers and the poultry farmers. So you'll be assisting both sides. And I think we should just check on the facts and move gradually in that direction with policy.
Is the government backing its words with action? I'll give you a quick example. I remember that the previous government, there was a shoe factory in Kumasi that was making shoes here. President Mahama directed that the soldiers and the security agencies should buy shoes from that factory. They did not. As I'm talking to you now, the factory says they're on the verge of collapse. A factory which is a joint venture between a Ghanian and somebody from Czech Republic in Kumasi, manufacturing shoes using leather from here. Now, if two governments cannot ensure that a shoe factory that makes shoes here and employs people here survives, and our military and soldiers and people will not buy shoes from them, is it that government is weak or government is not committed to implementing this type of policy?
I would say that, first of all, we should be sure about the quality of the shoes they are producing. The military requires a certain standard of shoes. Are they meeting that standard? It's not a question that you are producing the shoe and therefore we should buy good or bad. No. And therefore, we should look at the quality of the production and the pricing. If you produce an item here such that it costs twice as much as imported from somewhere, you are creating a problem, because you cannot be overprotected. You must be protected, but not overprotected. So I think it's something that should be looked at. But I completely agree that if the quality is good, meets the standard, then we should do what we call shadow pricing, making it, even if they are slightly more expensive, because they are generating employment, they should have an advantage and be given a percentage in shadow pricing so that we can buy from them even if they are slightly more expensive. So I think it's something that we should look at, and both Defense Minister and Trade and Industry Minister should collaborate on this. First of all, let's be sure about the standard, because the military always ensure a very high standard. You cannot be marching when the sole of your shoe begins to fall apart.
We understand that. We are talking to Osafo Maafo, Minister, Senior Minister. It's 12 minutes past the hour of 8. You can send your questions to us. We usually would have brought you tech and social media trends at 8, but we didn't want to interrupt the interview. But let me just quickly announce to you that you need to download the SC mobile app from the Google Play or the App Store. Use it for your banking transactions, and you can make some great price as is available to yourself. You can win a trip fully paid to watch Liverpool and have an Anfield tour. So download the SC mobile app, use it, and enjoy some great prizes. Coach, I know you are quite passionate about the import and the food things. So I'm going to give you 2 quick questions on the agriculture side. I'm going to move to something else.
Okay, so let me just take one on rice. I think the Ghana Rice Festival is even underway. I've seen some stories like that. There are some people who are suggesting that all state agencies must be forced to buy local rice for their Christmas and Easter distribution to their staff. If you look at the amount of money we spend in buying rice for hampers, it's a lot of money. With the procurement laws in place and every other structure in place, would you support this call that the state must do everything it can, even if we must throw away the procurement law a little bit and
lead by example
and join all the state agencies to buy local rice only for their staff during Christmas and the other festivities?
I am totally with you. Apart from everything else, the locally produced rice, nutritionally, is much better than the imported rice, most of which have been stored for a couple of years or 3 years there before they are imported into Ghana. So I think it's something we should really encourage. But let us do it immediately through persuasion. Every Ghanaian wants this economy to do better. So let us do by example. I mean, ministries are buying this. Let the ministers take the initiative and give the direction. I am with you.
But as senior minister, idea. We thought my understanding of the position is that being senior minister, you are the one who can read the Riot Act to other ministers and say, hey, how come people are still distributing foreign rice?
He has sold a very brilliant idea to me.
But you know this already.
I can assure you.
So can we see a memo to agencies that give us your quantities you need for this Christmas? Is a bit too late.
No, it's not.
You let's look at next year.
You don't need a memo on this now. Okay. As he said, it's too late. People might have already ordered their rice. I don't know. We are already in the middle of November.
Yeah.
So about a month from now, people will start distributing. So if people have already made purchases, etc., let us not force it this year. But let us do that convincing argument. You are very convincing in this direction. Let us talk to our colleagues that, look, this is our country. We want to reserve our foreign exchange. We want even to improve nutrition of our own people. Let's use the local rice. We want to give jobs to our people, etc., etc. I think
I am tempted to be a bit naughty and put the minister on the spot. He said leadership by example, and he's been speaking about local rice for a long time.
A lot of time.
He said even in 2004, your colleague in Nigeria mentioned that they were going to. What's your favorite local rice brand? Or do you know any of the local rice brands?
Apparently, I hardly touch rice as a staple.
Okay, we forgive you.
I live on Apmapesi and yam.
And the yam and Apim, they don't have brand names.
No, they don't have brand names, but I prefer Puna in the yam.
Of course.
And Apim,
Apim, the small one.
Yes,
Yes.
the small ones.
With Ntroa.
My taste,
You don't
I'm
even
not
eat too
a
much
rice.
rice.
Let's
Let's move on. Let's talk about macroeconomics, because even today people are saying, let me read a quick message. Bernard, we don't feel the impact of the agriculture on our economy. The minister, after 3 years, should be telling us what they have done. He is rather saying we should. He should be saying we have. Is he right? Why are you saying we should after 3 years?
No, we're talking about what to do on the policy direction. Now, after 3 years, agriculture, planting for food and jobs, has succeeded so much that Ghana became a net exporter of maize. We're importing maize, and this is factual. So, and it's obvious, looking at the market, that local production of food is really on the ascendancy. So I would say that we've done it, we are on the right path, and the way things are going, come end of 2020, the story of the agri sector will be different and positively different.
What is the major change in this economy since Akufo-Addo took over? What's been your most important achievement?
The most important achievement is that looking at our whole, call it vision of Ghana beyond aid, there's a general change of attitude of Ghanaians towards looking inside themselves, looking at local production, people pushing 1D, 1F from all angles, a lot of younger people getting into farming and agriculture. In fact, that mental change is relevant, and the Minister of Agri is doing very well. The Minister for Industry, under the 1D, 1F, is also working on a number of young people. In fact, the interest of young people in industry and agriculture is changing very positively. Everybody now believes that we should do things for ourselves. We should do things that will promote the economy. We should do things that will not make us dependent on exports. And it's becoming a mentality, and I think here Akufo-Addo's government is doing very well, and the results are showing in figures, as you see.
So you are speaking in reference to what we're discussing, but I'm broadening it now. Since you took over in 2017, and of course we are looking at this from the point of view of the budget, what has been the most important economic achievement in terms of the economy? I'm not asking in relation to the rice issue. I'm now talking generally in terms of the budget that was read yesterday, where we were in 2016. What do you think is what do you believe is the most important achievement economically?
Economically, you have to go sector by sector. If you take the cocoa sector, there is a big improvement in the production, and all indications are that this is going to be on the ascendancy. So the cocoa sector is doing very well. On the food production front, there's every indication that food imports is reducing and that food production is going up. Yes, look at your figures. And there is that production bias system that is taking place in the services, the same. So there's a general change of attitude towards production. And I think our main aim was to minimize taxation, and we did say so, that we should forget about excess taxation and go into production. And I think we are doing exactly that. And
but this is the only budget, of course, the first budget you came to cut nuisance taxes, and then you reintroduced taxes in the 2018, 2019, and then this year you did introduce new taxes. So in the 2017, 2018, 2019, this is actually the only budget that you have not touched taxes.
No, but the first one you
said you cut.
We cut.
But you kept the special petroleum tax. You just reduced.
No, but that was there. I mean,
but you criticized it in opposition, but you still kept it.
We didn't introduce it.
Yeah, but in opposition you said it was a bad tax, but you still maintained it.
Well, when you look at numbers, sometimes you have to review certain things. And if we cut about 11 taxes and keep one, That's not a bad performance.
But in the midterm budget, some taxes were increased. The communication service tax was increased.
Yes, that's an area. Some taxes are put in there to also encourage other things. And communication tax, yes, is a type of tax. First of all, don't forget that we can run this economy through the generation of our own revenue. And as you go along, you must, by all means, be looking for sources of revenue, sources which hurt least.
But on that tax, does that tax not defeat your digitization agenda? Because
it doesn't.
I'm guessing you want more people to use electronic means. You want people to do TIN numbers, use electronic means to pay taxes. So you encourage people to use their mobile devices and data. So if you tax that,
but the
volume,
the volume of the usage,
it does.
It's too small for it to be significant.
And then you recalculated the way you do the VAT NHIL. That was in the previous budget as well. And then, of course, during the meeting you held at Scholars of Business and Surgeons, the economic management team, you recalibrated the import benchmark values, which you subsequently. My question is, overall,
overall taxes have come down. Overall, this benchmark, they were reduced by 50%, and was meant to improve production, and it did achieve its aim. Overall, what we describe as nuisance taxes were completely eliminated. The financial taxes, etc., etc. They were all to aid production, and it did.
The financial services tax was removed.
Yes,
that was in 2017. But some new taxes were introduced in the 2019 budget, which is what I'm trying to ask you to comment on.
But you must always weigh these taxes in respect of relationship with productivity. And you want a situation where, as much as possible, you promote production. Now, taxes you can never do away without it. There must always be some taxes because we must raise revenue to run the country.
Now, Honorable Minister, your government is big on digitization.
Yes.
Yesterday, the Finance Minister mentioned digitization a lot. The Vice President has been pushing the digitization agenda.
He's the king of the digitization.
And the main backbone of digitization is the telecommunication services, internet, mobile credit and all that. But you increased the CST. How do you drive digitization in a country which is under digitalized, but increase the tax on the main commodity or the main element that promotes digitization?
That's the question I asked earlier that he's asking you to answer again. That it flies in the face of a digitization agenda because you are taxing people's talk and browsing, which is where you are sending the economy.
First of all, you need revenue. And needing the revenue are various possible areas you can tax. And you want to choose an area which, if you do tax, you first of all make some money. And therefore, normally, volume of business becomes relevant. And the harm it does, it's not so much as you are making it. No, it doesn't. In fact, there is so much surge for digitization because almost all the various service providers want to go digital. It eliminates corruption. It provides faster services. And therefore, it's an area that you promote, you support, but it's also an area which, through the volume of the business, you can also make some money. And I think the combination of this that brought in that extra tax. We are increasing the volume and we are encouraging it, we are supporting it. All our service providers are being encouraged to digitize. And when we went on budget hearing, one thing which became evident was that all the government agencies which have digitized have increased their internally generated funds, which was very, very interesting.
That's a fact. Yes. That's a fact. If you look at IGF figures for the various agencies, you see a rise. But on the user level, for example, 9:23 p.m. last night, we ran out of data. We had to stream something to enable our work to grow.
CTFL?
No, I'm talking about my home.
Your home, okay.
Yes. Now, I was buying 120 Ghana cedis data. Mm-hmm. Now, I had to pay 128.40 for 120 cedis data. You said it's negligible, but 8 cedis, 40 pesos, over $1 more for the data I was buying. This really is not negligible, Mr. Minister. Mm-hmm. And I think that it will not encourage users to access a lot of the digital service a bit more freely because they're having to pay more for getting access.
Buying 120 means that you were doing something relevant and big. As an individual, you were doing something relevant and big. And I'm sure the outcome, the outturn of what you were doing, 8 cities wouldn't make any difference. That's the way I say it.
It doesn't work
And
very
you didn't stop yourself from doing it because it was beneficial. So you went ahead and did it. So I think it's okay.
Well, what about energy sector levies? They were maintained, right? So
Which one?
all the energy sector levies that were increased in the mid-term budget of July 2019 were not touched. So the assumption is that they continue. So, for example, 20 Ghana pesos per litre for petrol and diesel,
We didn't introduce
8
any new
pesos.
tax.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But,
Yes.
but no, you introduced it this year, so you've kept it.
Yes, we've kept it.
Yeah, so you say you are moving from, you see, my overall question about taxes is this. Number one, you say you are moving from taxation to production. Now, you give tax concessions to a lot of large companies. Last year, the president announced that to the tune of 2.4 billion cedis. You increase taxes on things that we spend. So a lot of your taxes are indirect taxes. So what we buy, we are taxed for. And large companies rather seem to benefit from your tax concession because probably there are investors coming in. If you look at the overall effect, is it not retrogressive? Where larger organizations who are investors are getting tax concessions, MPS and co, to the millions of cedis. And then people who are talking, buying petrol, buying LPG with lower incomes are rather being taxed. Is that not retrogressive? Overall,
I would say that the Minister of Finance is so worried about these tax concessions that he has a draft paper, already before a committee of cabinet to examine in detail this whole idea of exemptions. And I think very soon he will hit Parliament and get this concession mentality addressed. It's a worry because the rate at which we are losing money through tax concession, to me, is a worry. And I think the minister feels strongly about it and has worked on it. And we are certainly going to get something done on tax exemptions. Because the beneficiaries of tax exemptions, as you rightly pointed out, are usually not the small ones. They are the big ones. And we should address it. And if you are not able to afford paying taxes, then don't do the business. We should make the taxes part of the business cost and let people pay for the taxes.
Let's talk about infrastructure briefly now. The road minister said this is the year of roads, and he's initially said government made the largest payment to contractors in history by paying about 2.6 billion in the past few months to contractors. Your opponents say this whole focus on roads, you brought the problem on yourself. When you took over in 2017, you said you were doing an audit and a rescoping of road projects. Cocoa road projects, for example, you stalled those projects for 2 years, saying you were looking, or Cocoa Board said they were looking to check whether the projects were warranted. After 2 years, you have not published the result of your audit. You've had to now re-award these Cocoa projects. You haven't done enough maintenance, so the roads have deteriorated. Hence, we are seeing almost every week a demonstration about roads. What's your comment on that?
My comment is that Cocoa roads or roads sector remains a top priority of this government. You have not cited, I have, the investigation that went into the Cocoa roads, and it is a bad one. It has not been published, but at the appropriate time, it would be published. Now, the fact that investigations took place were relevant because I don't think me and you want to support corruption from any angle. I would say that there is something else you did not address yourself to. Before the election, our opponents published a green book where a list of all roads which have been done by them were published. Now ask yourself this simple question. If indeed these roads had been done, and the very places where these roads are, people are crying, people are demonstrating about bad roads, they were either not done, or if they were done so poorly that within 2.5, 3 years, they are all now completely destroyed. So there was something wrong with that whole story about roads done by the NDC. That I'm not going to give an excuse. We think that the road sector is very important. We have put it as a priority. Luckily for us, we are approaching the financing from two angles. Our Sino Hydro credit is going to put $2 billion specifically, about $650 million specifically for the road sector. And we have already put it in phases. The phase one, which is about 4 of them, is ready to take off because the money has been released. Now, on our own self, through the Cocoa board borrowing, etc., we are also finding resources within the government to also tackle the road sector as a priority. And I can assure you, we are at it, and we have talked, we have worked out all the details, and you will see a lot of road construction, quality road construction in 2020.
But do you admit that for 2 years we did precious little on roads?
Yes.
And that deteriorates the existing roads because there are roads which need routine maintenance. And if for 2 years you withheld money from that on the basis of your audit, then when you want to now go back to the road, it's deteriorated to the point you spend more money on the road.
Your latter statement is wrong. Routine maintenance on urban roads were all going on.
No.
Yes, routine maintenance, nobody stopped routine maintenance.
When we look at the 2019 budget, the amount of... I look at 2019 budget, he mentioned the list of roads that he was going to maintain.
Yes.
A lot of those, and this was a lot of those roads, there was no maintenance done in the budgeted period. I looked at it. They promised, but they did not. So 2019 routine maintenance didn't start until the final quarter.
Minister, to give you more evidence to what Bernard is saying, in your budget in 2004, the Mankransu to Tepa Road, it was done.
2004.
Yes, I'm coming. And between 2004 and 2019, we've done about 15 years. But if you look at that road now, it's so terrible. We have had to put it in this budget to do a Buakwa to Bechim junction, 30 kilometers, anew, not to maintain. So what he's suggesting is that even though we've been talking about roads, we've not been putting any budgets together for maintenance. And if you look at the Appendix 8C, 2020 indicative ceilings for the RCCs, you'd realize that institutions like Public Works Department, they are not allocated any funding for CAPEX. And we know that they also works with maintenance. They also deal with maintenance. So a lot is not being done in the maintenance space. That's basically what Bernard is trying to point out.
That's how come the agitation has increased, because the roads have been allowed to deteriorate to a point where it's become almost immotorable.
Yeah, but they were not allowed to deteriorate by us. We were told stories of road construction which are taking place, which either never took place or were very poorly done. And therefore, you have the road sector facing slash from two angles. But I believe that going forward, we have the right program, and we have now got the resources. Look, when we got these first resources from Sino Hydro, we were faced with two serious problems. First of all, the NDC government protested to the IMF that it was a loan and not a barter, this Sino Hydro. I'm sure you all read about it. And then we tried to convince the IMF, I was in the delegation, that it was a barter, and it was indeed a barter. Finally, until the IMF agreed that it was a barter. Then, the barter was to do with payment through the processing of bauxite. It was very, very specific. And then the bauxite deposit had also ownership problem. We had to go to court. And that these two things, and what was it about? It was to do with the involvement of the former president's brother. And we had to go to court.
Exton Cubic.
Yes, Cubic, to get it resolved. Luckily, we also got resolved. These two activities did delay the implementation. But now it's more being resolved.
So just to be clear on this bauxite issue, will the Chinese give us 2 billion cedis to fix roads, or they will do roads or infrastructure projects worth the 2 billion, so that we know what to expect? Because I know there are local contractors who are on certain roads, who have seen some of the roads they are on being put under Sino Hydro. So in your mind, how is this working? Is it the Chinese who are going to deliver the road themselves, or they are going to sort of provide resources for our people to do the roads, or what's going to happen?
It's both. because the Chinese, I mean, every loan has its own modus operandi for repayment. Since we are going to pay for this loan through product, which is bauxite, processed bauxite, I would say it, the Chinese, no doubt, will also have to be sure that, one, you are processing the bauxite right to a quality that will meet our standard. The Chinese also wants to make sure that even you are producing the roads at a cost that is competitive. So you cannot take them out of this whole arrangements. So they are definitely involved, and I think we are going to look for value for money, and we make sure that we also meet the value
But
for
if,
money.
so they would build the roads themselves?
Yes and no. They will be involved in the selection of contractors to build the roads.
So they will provide the resources to those contractors?
Yes.
Would they be
Naturally.
Chinese contractors or Ghanaian contractors?
Well, if they are going to go through a tender process, it can be either.
I'm asking this because I am we have a lot of contractors in the Ghanaian economy who say because of the lack of payments their businesses are down. And if you have 2 billion worth of
Not 2 billion, about 640 million.
million,
That's 2 billion.
other things, that's
yes.
a lot of money. What percentage are you going to insist is done by Ghanaian contractors?
Well, so far we haven't discussed that local content component.
But then we are saying 2020 is the year of roads, and we've included a sign.
Yeah. But they've gone very far with it. These roads, already the Minister of Roads and Highways have selected. We have regionalized, we've met on it. There are some basic designs on some of them already. So there's a collaboration between the Minister of Roads and Highways and whoever is going to do the roads. There must be.
Just a quick understanding of tollable roads, because I know that one of the issues you had was that when you took over, you realized that the previous government had taken a loan from UBA with the road fund as collateral, so about 60% of the money was collateralized, which you said hindered the money you had in the road fund to do road maintenance. Has that matter been resolved?
Which matter?
The road fund. Because we were told that the road fund had been collateralized. So revenues into the road fund had been collateralized to pay for a loan that UBA contracted. We contracted from UBA. So we had only about 30% of road fund proceeds to actually use for road maintenance. I don't know if you are well briefed on that.
I'm aware. In fact, it was far less than 30%. So we refinanced the road fund loan, meaning that we look for monies from other banks which give us a longer tenor of repayment and therefore made available to us a bigger proportion of the fund. We have done some refinancing.
There are people, and we haven't looked through the full budget, but people keep saying that the roads you mentioned in 2020 budget did not include any road in the Volta region. Yesterday we asked the deputy minister, he also looked at it and he couldn't see any road. Was it an oversight? That there is a road in the OT region, but there was no road in the list of roads in the Volta, and some people feel that that's not fair.
In fact, there are many roads. I also noticed it at page 60 of the report, where the list Volta region was left out. It was obviously a mistake.
It's an oversight.
There was a mistake.
It's a mistake.
The typing.
So there are Volta regional roads?
Yes, there are a lot. In fact, I talked to the minister last night. He was in Japan. Because when I also saw it, I asked myself, how could it be? Because there were 15 regions instead of 16. And I asked, he said, oh, we have a whole list in the Volta region.
So did he give you names?
No. Because he couldn't have given me names from where he was. We have to deal with the chief director from here.
All right, it's 8:30. It's 8:38. We're still talking to the senior minister. I'm going to take some questions.
But let's look. The whole Eastern Corridor Road that we are doing, most parts of it will be done in 2020. A lot of the Eastern Corridor roads passes to the Volta region, and it's on. So you cannot talk about roads in 2020 without Volta region. And you know we are doing the Volivo Bridge, this huge bridge down south, the Kope, and that by extension we are doing all the roads associated with the Volivo Bridge, both upstream and downstream, and most of the roads are in the Volta region, and therefore it cannot be imagined that there are no roads in the Volta region in 2020.
Honorable, you mentioned that some work has been done on the Cocoros project, and you've not published it, and it's the result of the investigation is with you. I have a key interest in this because a cocoa road runs right in my village in front of my farm.
Adoye.
And they put
Bunaafo.
a signage there.
Where? Which?
Bunaafo in Kransan area. They
Okay.
put a signage there. That signage over the past 6 years, the signage broke down. The last time I went to Adoye was 3 weeks ago, and I saw women picking up the wood to go and use as firewood. And this is a true story I'm telling you.
I believe you.
There were 229 roads in the Cocoa Roads Improvement Project 1, which was going to cost us 5.13 billion Ghana cedis. In Ashanti, Bunaafo, Central, Eastern, Western, and Volta. You have said
Cost how much?
5.13.
5.13 billion Ghana
cedis.
cedis.
Yes.
229 roads. You have said
29 rows.
yes, that in the green book of the previous government, they said they had done so many roads which are non-existent. And your government realized that the Cocoros projects were not being managed well, so you are investigating them. Knowing that roads ensure mobility and development, and knowing that Ghanaians are passionate about roads, you've even mentioned the Eastern Corridor Road, which portions were part of the Cocoa Roads. Why not publish the report and be transparent with the situation? And the new projects you are doing, why not publish the full scale of the projects? Let us know the schedules and everything so that there is transparency. Because if your government believes in accountability and transparency, why are you hiding a very important report that would have cost us? In fact, we've paid some of the monies already. So a 5.13 billion Ghana cedi
Worth of roads.
group of projects.
We're not hiding any report to start with. And to start with, I'm sure from last week in newspapers, Cocoa Board has started advertising these Cocoros.
Yes, they are here, pages 20, 21, and 22.
I'm happy you've noticed.
Brother,
And this is only the first part of it. They're continuing next week with another set. There are a lot of roads to be advertised. They didn't put all on at one go. They are doing them in tranches. So see more ahead of us. These roads will be financed by Cocoa Board, will be supervised in construction by Ministry of Roads and Highways, and payment will be done through the Ministry of Finance.
but Honorable, I think the question
Yes,
is asking is, let me give you an example. When you came to procurement, Finance Minister last year told us the number of single source contracts that this government had changed to save us a certain 700 million cedis. My question is, if you've done an audit of roads worth 5.13 billion cedis, for which for 2 years no construction was done, we need to know to what extent were the roads overpriced? Is it that the people who had put money in place for non-existent roads? Did they overbloat the project? To let us believe that the 2 years was worthwhile, because we've lost 2 years of roads on the basis of an audit. And to not publish the audit
That's
report.
a point well made. Since the report is available and is still being looked at in detail, I think at appropriate time it will be published.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
It will certainly be published.
Let's move on. Let's talk quickly about the financial sector cleanup, because I know you ran banks before. So even though you're an engineer, you are a banker. A lot of people are concerned about two things. They feel that one of the unintended consequences of the cleanup, particularly of the banking sector, is that our local banks are not that many. Local, private. And they feel that capital is cultural. In fact, the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Soludo, he says, capital is cultural. So you need to be careful the ownership of your financial sector. When we take the whole pie, CBG is good, consolidated, GCB is great, ADB is fine, but the private ones, apart from Omni Basic, Cow, I don't know of any other local, private, and they feel that's not good enough. Was it an unintended consequence that you were trying to clean up the banking sector, but in retrospect, you've created a sector that is dominated by foreign banks?
The banking sector in Ghana has always been dominated by foreign banks. The domination by foreign banks is not as a result of the cleanup. Certainly not. Go back and your Barclays understand that it has always been dominated by foreign banks, because it is a profession that was introduced as part of the colonial administration. So it has always been so. Naturally, a lot of efforts are being made, even in the cleanup, to protect, call it the indigenous banks. And I'm sure the package done, the last group was indigenous banks, and our NIB, our ADB, and all the other banks have been put together, and amount of bailout has been organized for them. So certainly, as much as possible, the government would promote local businesses, and we are very much concerned about it. But when you talk about the cleanup in the banking sector, certain specific criteria was put in the cleanup exercise. You decide which bank has gone under and which bank has gone under, not by ownership, but by the capital base of the bank, how eroded the bank's own structure and whatnot. And you find out that most of these banks were living in name. And let me tell you that Nigeria did structure of their banks from 105 to 25. Nigerian banks reduced from 105 to about 25. Now the Nigerian 25 banks are now financially so powerful that at least 3-4 of them are in Ghana. They've gone beyond Nigeria. So it is not the number of banks which really is relevant. It is the financial muscle of these banks.
Baba said the Nigerian banking sector example you give, the majority of the banks are Nigerian owned, and the strongest and the largest are Nigerian, which is the difference between us and them.
Well, so that has been the traditional structure of the Nigerian banks for a long time. And don't forget,
no, they used the restructuring to strengthen their local ownership. We didn't.
Nigeria nationalized the foreign banks along the line.
Yes.
If you remember,
Yes.
they nationalized Barclays and all those things along the line in the 70s. So their banking structure have been different from ours. We never did that. So our banking structure is different. We have operated indigenous and foreign all operating side by side.
But I'm asking this because you have some ambitious projects. You want to do one district, one factory. A lot of your initiatives require capital. Now, and I know you know this better than I do, that capital is cultural. They determine where to invest based on their priority. So if you have a banking sector...
And profitability.
Yes, but you need to merge that profitability with national development goals.
Yes.
So even in all the countries we speak to, Singapore, wherever, Korea, they all find a way of funding things that agree with the government's developmental objective. So if...
I think you heard something which will answer this question. The Minister for Finance talked about the National Development Bank, a new bank that is to be capitalized in 2020 and formed. That will also be, we are discussing with the IMF, the World Bank, African Development Bank for the capitalization. And this bank will be favored with other resources, perhaps cheaper than the market, and this bank will also be given some targeted role to play by the state.
But the money is coming from the World Bank, which is not bad, but I'm just, you see the point I'm trying to make, which you are
I'm saying that, is that this targeted financing, we have thought it through, and we are going to do it through the new...
You see, let me explain something. If you look at even ECG and PDS, who pays the piper calls the tune? The Americans say they are not happy with how you treated PDS. They are withdrawing their money. That's my point. So if you are bringing a National Development Bank, World Bank giving you 250 million. World Bank is a Bretton Woods institution. You know them. So they have their own objectives. But you have a development plan for your country. So if you want to support certain types of business and they say, well, this is not in line with our objectives, you have no say. So my point to you is that...
That's not right. The National Development Bank will be owned 100% by us. And we are going to determine their objective. We are going to determine their priorities. And we are going to more or less deal with them on targeted customer basis because we are going to use them to handle some of our priorities.
Now, Mr. Minister, you said we don't need new banks. But we are going to have a National Development Bank which will be given $250 million. Meanwhile, we have the GESAL, that is the Ghana Incentive-Based Risk Sharing System for Agri Lending, which was announced, I think, in your first budget or your second budget, which has not been appropriately capitalized to do the work for Agri. We already have policy banks in this country. ADB is a policy bank to look at Agri, NIB for investment, and other ones that have collapsed.
For industrial.
Yes. So why not retool them and give them funding and ensure that they concentrate on the purpose for which they were set up, but to set up a new one?
Well, I think it's a question of working the detail in terms of policy, in terms of other factors. people have talked about merging NIB and ADB to form a bank. We have also talked about forming a completely new one, but not necessarily depending on the open market for all its resources. Now, ADB and NIB, as we see it today, they are all universal banks, and they are competing for customers like any other bank. So you would prefer to leave them, support them to exist, and make them grow as universal banks. You prefer that now you want to establish a specialized development bank to be incentivized to do other things for the country and for the government. So the two are not.
All right, let's read some comments for the minister. Senior minister is in the house answering questions on the economy, and some of this is coming from the budget. Some of this is also coming from you. 054-998-6996. Bernard, don't spare the minister at all. Kindly ask him the hard questions. Thank you. Ghanaians knew the NDC were not competent enough to manage the affairs of the country. The reason why we voted your government into power. Why have you come back 3 years later to refer us to something we have already thrown away? Do you not think it's a sign of incompetence on your part? Answer Kweku Nyako. That question keeps coming up. That you keep making reference to the NDC, and it's been 3 years since they left office.
You must refer to work done by the NDC, certainly, because you cannot talk in a vacuum. I mean, if somebody says, I've done XY road, and they haven't done it, so you didn't talk about it.
But your mandate is 4 years, and in the third year, in the final budget of your 4 years, you are still making reference to your predecessor.
Because of claims they made, and which you still keep bargaining us with them.
For which reason we voted them out.
Yes,
so you are not supposed to be reminding us of what they said. We are supposed to be asking you what you promised.
What they said they did. Not what they said. We are not saying what they said.
Yeah, but if what they did was good, we wouldn't have voted them out. So clearly people are not happy with them. So to come and keep repeating what they did.
What they did and not do right, which has had effect on what is going on.
Did you underestimate the size of the problem you inherited?
I wouldn't say that. Because the situation was so bad in 2016 that anybody who looked at the growth trajectory and everything, it was very clear that if we continue that path, it wouldn't have worked.
Nigeria has shut its borders to prevent goods from entering their country. Here in Ghana, Guta members continue to shut shops of foreigners to prevent them from retaliating. What is his view on this? David from Wager. Good morning, Bernard and team. Please ask Honorable Minister whether he would like to aspire for president in the near future. I love listening to him. He should write a book on how he sees Ghana at 100. Pass Solo in Sunyani. Good morning, Bernard. My question to the senior minister is that this is the third time Bolga Pumago Boku Road has been mentioned in the budget. What is happening? We need clarification. Thank you. NBA from Kintampo. Good morning, Bernard. Please ask the senior minister, how does he want to be remembered under the Nanado government? What legacy is he leaving for us? Nana Nyimedu Dansoman. Please ask the senior minister why the government is not cutting down on the expenditure, especially with this large number of ministries or large ministers. I need you to answer that. Ask the senior minister what government is doing about the huge corporate tax waivers and concessions that contribute largely to revenue leakage. Chasing individuals in the formal and informal sectors alone is not enough. He's commented on that. Lawson from Akachi. Bernard, please ask the senior minister why roads in the Volta region were not captured. He's commented on that already. Bernard and team, there has been too much emphasis on Cocoros. What about gold, bauxite, or manganese roads? Check out the state of roads in areas like Takwa, Prestia, Bogoso, Obuasi, and Co. Cardinal from Oyarifa.
Interestingly, the two tend to overlap. These areas you mentioned, these are all cocoa growing areas. Am I right? You are from that.
They are cocoa and also
they are cocoa, and also this is where the minerals are as well. So the cocoa roads satisfy most of the mineral located areas, and therefore we are very comfortable when you deal with the cocoa roads.
Okay.
You're indirectly dealing with these.
Now, I want you to take this question. Ask the minister, what is the current administration doing about the living condition of Ghanaians? Things are rough and tough.
This question I also get almost on daily basis from people. We must, at every point in time, make sure that we are getting certain fundamentals right. And I can assure you that the way the economy is growing and going to expand with time, very soon, and I mean very soon, what you are describing as rough and tough will be smooth and good.
Honorable Minister, if you say very soon without any proper shadows and timelines,
very soon,
you are working on the macro.
Yeah, the macro is working well.
And you have the big
the macro
data.
not working well.
It looks good. It looks good on paper.
The macro looks good.
It looks nice.
And you have the big data.
I don't measure it. It's measured by the relevant institutions.
So the macro is looking good.
Yeah, the macro is looking good.
So when should it translate to micro?
Yeah.
Good. It's a very important question. There's always a lag.
Okay.
And now that we are dealing with the actual sectors, like 1D, 1F, we are dealing with planting for food and jobs, etc. These are also bringing out desired results. But there is a lag. And I can assure you that as we enter the last lap of Nanado's first term, we shall all see change for better. Because we have now got the macro environment right. One is a necessity. You cannot do anything on production without this micro environment. People think otherwise. You cannot be producing within an inflation of 60%. It's not possible. So now that your inflation is 7.5, now that your GDP, your deficit is, you are keeping your deficit by law below 5, imposing this on yourself. My friend,
has he justified the size
good.
of his government? 130 ministers is a large number. Has it been justified?
Well, you would notice that a lot of the ministries are not together as some of them used to be. They are now specific. It also gives you an idea about the volume of work to be done in some of these areas. And I think what is important would be the final results of these ministries. And I dare say that from all indications, Akufo-Addo will be proved right, that he put people on specific, called them subsectors of bigger ministries, and they are delivering. And I think
is monitoring and evaluation delivering?
Yes.
Sanitation delivering?
Water and sanitation, yes.
Is
big way.
Aviation delivering?
Yes.
I'm mentioning the new one, so water and sanitation
Yes.
separate.
I'm sure now you know that
evaluation.
now WA has an airport specific.
It was built before you came. It was built by the previous government.
No, it wasn't.
Who built what?
So it's Tamale that was built before. What was started? Even Tamale was started long ago. We are improving.
Are you the one
on
who
it.
built what? I
No.
thought it was. They built
That
who?
project.
They built what? Oh,
Yeah.
they built the what? You inaugurated it all?
No. We did a lot of work on WA.
But did it begin under your
No, it
tenure?
began under
Did you
NDC.
sign that contract?
All the regional capitals would have started long even before NDC because they're supposed to, all of them to have.
So what? Let me ask you. Then Potty, and Minister of Aviation, since he came to office. Then Potty, is that English? Is that
Yeah, that's the.
Then Potty now. Because these are new ministries. Aviation, railway, we can see some things because we heard they
Sanitation.
launched.
Are you aware that the Ghana Civil Aviation was voted the best civil aviation sector in Africa?
Yes, they were voted. But they say
So without
was that the
in
Ministry
terms
of Railways
achievement? Without, it's an excellent achievement because you don't talking about security. You are talking about all that goes into aviation, and aviation is a very complicated sector in terms of safety. And if you become the top of Africa,
It's been 3 years. Do we have the new airline? I think that was one of the main targets the president gave.
What is the new what?
The president gave a target that we wanted a
National
national
flag carrier.
flag carrier, which I believe will be the major achievement because everything else we're talking about.
We are almost there. We are working.
We're almost there.
Yes.
So I'm asking the new sanitation ministry. Say we make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. It doesn't look like that.
You don't see any improvement in sanitation in Accra? I'm asking you this question.
There's
a lot of improvement
really
in sanitation.
in Accra.
I'll get to the Accra Central, and you see a change, and a change for better.
I'm mentioning the new ministries, monitoring and evaluation, led by the economist Akoto says. Is that ministry supposed to be engaging the public, or is for your purposes? Because we hardly
fundamentally for our purposes. What are you monitoring? You are monitoring the performance of other ministries. You are monitoring like this budget we have read. Every minister has been given some schedule to be the work of the ministry for monitoring, to make sure that projects put under specific ministries are being discharged rightly and on time.
But you need the ministry for that.
Yes, you do. In fact, one of the biggest shortfalls in Ghanaian management is monitoring and evaluation. People just work and.
But if you monitor and
evaluate,
we are the people who voted you into office.
But you cannot specifically be monitoring. You will be doing the outcome of what is happening. But the actual monitoring technical monitoring of these ministries has to be done and done
But
to
there's
the
something
president.
called social accountability.
Yeah,
as
it
well,
is.
so that we will get a sense of if.
But
for
that
example,
is the benefit
as
arising.
even published, you can't even publish a report. We are on course, a report to even let people, because you see, a population is not just citizens who are voters. We have civil society, we have media, we have people who can read and follow.
Monitoring
We have not
is working specifically to the president on what, and it gives quarterly report on performance of his colleague ministers.
And you have Ministry of Special Development Initiatives.
Yes.
Ministry of Regional Reorganization.
Yes. We have created new regions, you are aware, from 10 to 16. And you don't just create a region, you create a region, and that region must develop. Most of why could they vote and get a 75% yes? The enthusiasm is there because most people wanted the region, and the results of the referenda showed very clearly. Now, when you do that, we give each new region a seed capital of 20 million cedis. But that's just a seed capital. A seed capital implies that there would be other monies added. And if you go through this budget, some money has been added, and
what about special development initiatives ministry? Why do you need a ministry like that? You already have local government. Why do you create all these ministries with chief directors, deputies?
Your worry must be the output.
But people just ask you about output.
We have created regional development entities like southern sector, middle sector, northern sector, and these regional development entities are carrying out certain functions. And this special initiative ministry that is doing the coordination of this, call it sector development entities, and is very useful.
Okay, so the people of Ghana will decide whether they see the benefit. Just another one.
They will definitely see the benefit, and I'm sure that when we vote next year, December, the results will show the overwhelming acceptance for Akufo-Addo to continue.
Bernard, you asked specifically about the aviation ministry, and for emphasis, you asked the question in three. So I just wanted to do a bit of fact checking. So I'm looking at the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority's 2015 annual report.
2015?
Yes, on the plans for the new airports and what they were doing as at then. So on the Ho airport, they say that construction of an airport in Ho commenced in September 2015. So that is for Ho. And the Wa Airstrip is being developed to become operational for commercial flights this year. And it includes rehabilitation of an existing... No, it was an airstrip, and they said they were improving the airstrip into an airport. So the rehabilitation of an existing structure into a terminal building and the construction of a perimeter fence around the airport. So just to bring clarity that it's not done under this ministry.
Yeah, but it was started earlier.
Yeah, but there's actually a feeling that you don't like to give credit to the previous government for things they did. In fact, they said you didn't commission the new airport for that reason, the new airport that they built. In fact, it's a feeling NDC has that you blame them for things that went wrong, but you don't credit them for things they did right. And therefore, projects that they finish, you don't commission it. And they use the main Accra airport as an example. And then when President went to the Volta region, they said the whole airport as well has been left for that same reason. You are the senior minister. What's going on with those things? Why didn't you commission the Kotoka airport, the new one, beautiful airport? Was it because the NDC government, you didn't trust the money they used, or what was the problem?
Oh, I think that if it was necessary for us to commission it, we would have done it. And in the case,
but we commissioned,
it was already
used. We commission hospitals, classroom blocks, and toilets.
Why not?
So why don't you commission an airport? Is it because you felt...
Have they completed
the airport is being used.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's completed.
When you interviewed the Volta regional minister, he said the airport is done, and then they were looking at the commercial arrangements and the various things.
No, there are a lot of other things
to make it operational. But Bernard, if you
permit
permit me, I know the senior minister has been working on the subject, in particular about Ayalolo, public transport for the masses. Where are we with Ayalolo?
I think the mayor of the city is now in close touch with a group of investors to get the Ayalolo matter resolved and new investment put in and improvement. There are so many things he's doing. He is to meet, we are meeting in the first week of December on this with his report, and from there we'll take it out.
While at it, I believe that any big budget expenditure that goes on in this government, at least you get to see or you get to appraise it. Is that the right thing that is done in the government? Like any big budget thing that is done?
Well, I'm part of the team that prepared the budget, so naturally, the data,
he's a senior minister.
The data came to my attention.
So this week there was an announcement that we have signed a concession agreement for the $2.3 billion Accra SkyTrain. That was the announcement by the government, and the words were that we had signed a concession agreement, and the president, he was quoted as saying that this will be a game changer, that we have signed this agreement. But then the release from the government also said that we are now going to conduct feasibility studies. How do you sign a $2.3 billion concession without having done a feasibility study?
Why would anybody invest in $2 billion without a feasibility study?
That's the release from the government.
So obviously, a lot more work has been done to reach that decision of signing. Yes,
okay.
Naturally.
Before we go, I'm going to give you the chance to tell Ghanaians where we are and where we are going. You've said you've built the macro foundations, and that there's a time lag before they would see the micro benefit. So, do we need to vote for Akufo-Addo for another term before we see the benefit in our pocket, or we will see the benefit before election?
In fact, you will see the benefits before the election. Now that we've got this micro framework right, and we all admit it is right, we have a whole year ahead of us before Akufo-Addo's first term ends. And we have specific projects in the offing. We have the 1D, 1F, and we have about 181 projects commenced, and we're looking for about 200 and something. We have the road structures all set. We have our Sino-Hydro projects ready to take off, so that next year there will be a lot of sector-specific projects being implemented. And that is where, when you implement a project, what happens? You employ people, you pay them, things will move faster, etc. So the effect will begin to be felt in people's pocket. But don't forget that even the number of people this government has engaged through the public sector, through the private sector, the allowances we introduced or we restored, you cannot tell me that these monies is not going to people's pockets. People tend to exaggerate some of these matters. But if you pay so much, look, this free senior high school, our flagship project, has put 2.2 billion cedis in people's pocket by paying on behalf of how many? 1.6 school children, 1.2 million school children. So I think that already people are feeling these things in their pockets. All the promises we gave, we've literally fulfilled them all. And we are improving upon our performance.
So you are going to look for new promises?
Oh, no, not yet. We are implementing our manifesto, very detailed, and literally everything we promise, we are doing.
Let me give you a parting question. Some
Yes.
people feel that we campaign with manifestos, but we must govern with a development plan. What's the balance? Because the suggestion is that the NDPC put together a plan, but when this government took over, you didn't really feel compelled to continue with that development plan. If you look at long-term development, what's your opinion on how to marry a party's manifesto with a development plan for a country in a way that works?
In fact, if you read Ghana Beyond Aid paper, we are saying that there should be a relationship between what we call a development plan of Ghana. That should be such that no matter what manifesto you put in, if we have agreed to have a railway system, that railway system must take place.
Okay.
And that is where your earlier question then comes in. Yes, the development plan must always be there, but the development plan must be consistent with what is carried out, particularly your micro framework. If your targets mention your development plan, you are missing them all, then there's something wrong with your development plan. if your development plan is meeting the targets, then we add to it, and manifestos failing. And everybody preparing a manifesto should have the framework of the development plan.
So as we speak, is that what's happening? Is that development plan the guiding principle for the manifestos of
the
parties?
MPP, through the manifesto, development plan, no doubt. And we have a whole ministry for planning and NDPC in place. And therefore, these manifestos fit into the overall development agenda of the country. And it's just for emphasis.
So you are working with the development plan that Kwesi handed over to President Akufo-Addo on the eve of 2017, because I recall he had a meeting where he presented the work they had done, and I'm sure you were in that meeting.
Yes, I was at that meeting.
Is that what you are working with?
No, that's not what we are working with.
Why?
But that is also a guide, because, as I said one time in Parliament, if you have a development plan where all your targets have been missed, then there is a problem.
So you think the development plan was not fit for purpose, or it has to be redone?
It has to be revised. I will use that word.
So is it being done?
Yes, it's being done.
Led by Professor Adey?
Not Professor Adey.
He's the board chairman
led by
of
Professor
the
Adey is.
Oh, sorry. I think Professor Adey
is the Minister for Planning.
So the Minister for Planning is working on development plan.
Yes, he is. That's, you see, the Minister for Planning and NDPC, these are constitutional bodies.
Good.
And they are working.
So they are working.
Yes, they are working.
I appreciate your time.
And don't forget that the President came out with his medium-term plan. This went to Parliament. It was debated, etc. And we are fitting into it. But within it are the promises of our manifesto, and they are not, in fact, call it anti the development plan. They are very consistent with the development plan. Yes.
We appreciate your time. Thank you for talking to us. We wish you well.
Thank you very much, young man. As I said, I enjoy your
my vest.
Your vest, I really enjoy it.
It's part of our support for 1D1.
And looking at this young man too.
It's also an African.
You must be doing well at this CTFM.
Okay. So
when we finish our operation, feed yourself the first farm, you will come and prepare.
We need to tell you that we are.
That will be fine.
Yes.
But I think looking at our performance, Akufo-Addo certainly deserves another term.
The people of Ghana will decide.
Yes, but they would certainly decide positively. There is no doubt.
Thank you for your time. That
Thank
was
you very much.
Honorable Osafo Maafo, Senior Minister of Ghana, and he spent.
I think along the line, I would want us to perhaps look at some specific sectors of the budget. We didn't get time.
Yes, today we just scratch the surface.
The surface generally. So that
we are free. If you call us tomorrow morning, we are ready.
We see so that you see the good work Akufo-Addo's government is doing. We are so purposeful and we are so targeted that next year you will be happy to see what is going on.
We pray. That was Honorable Osafo Maafo, Senior Minister of the Republic of Ghana, spending an hour and a few minutes with us on the Citi Breakfast Show. Osafo.